Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Alright, without further ado, let us dive straight into the recap of TSUKIMICHI Moonlit Fantasy Part 22. Now, for those of you who might have forgotten, in the previous part, Makoto became directly involved in the political turmoil of Tsuge. After finishing the opening of his new shop, he had to face the Ion Revolution, followed by a critical discussion with Seiritz regarding the Superior Dragon's Labyrinth. In the end, Makoto planned to go to Lorel together with Tomoe in order to uncover the mystery of the Yasukatsui Valley. However, before doing that, he wanted to stabilize the Kuzunoha Company, Asora, and the Academy first, so that no problems would arise while he was away. Now, let us continue to part 22. The story begins in Asora. As planned, when Makoto prepared to depart for Lorel together with Tomoe, he informed all of his subordinates about it. However, the situation immediately changed when Mio expressed her desire to join as well. At that moment, the atmosphere instantly heated up. Without waiting long, an argument between Mio and Tomoe erupted. Shiki, Tamaki, and Ehma, who sensed the signs of danger, immediately evacuated themselves, leaving Makoto alone to face Mio and Tomoe. Although it initially looked like a serious duel was about to happen, the two of them eventually cancelled that idea. They realized that if they truly fought, the city that had been built in Asora could turn into rubble within minutes. Makoto could only sit down while sipping his tea, waiting for their anger to subside. After the aura around both of them finally calmed down, Makoto then gathered the courage to ask who would be going to Lorel. Upon hearing that question, Tomoe and Mio approached him with bright expressions, as if the argument that had just happened never existed. Surprisingly, the two of them actually reached an agreement. Tomoe stated that a fight was no longer necessary because they had found the most efficient solution. Both of them would go together. Mio affirmed the same thing, stating that allowing both of them to come along was the most perfect choice without any risk. However, Makoto tried to think logically. He reminded them that leaving Asora and Tsuge without supervision from the two main pillars, Tomoe as the administrative guardian and Mio as the person in charge of the kitchen and restaurant, could cause chaos. At this point, Tomoe reassured Makoto, explaining that she had already prepared several people who could temporarily replace her role. Mio said the same thing. In fact, Mio had already trained the restaurant staff so that operations would not be disrupted. She also planned to introduce a bento system so that food lines would not pile up. That way, the restaurant could continue running smoothly without any issues. Makoto wanted to argue, but he realized that debating with two super beings like Tomoe and Mio would only end in futility. Their resolve was already firm. And honestly, bringing along two disaster-level combat forces made Makoto feel a little anxious, but on the other hand, he also felt safer with both of them accompanying him. So, after a long discussion, and seeing that there was no strong reason to forbid it, Makoto finally agreed to take them to Lorel. He entrusted all matters in Asora entirely to Tamaki, while matters in Tsuge were entrusted to Shiki. After everything was decided, the three of them headed to the room where Shiki and Tamaki were waiting. Unlike the earlier commotion, the atmosphere here was much calmer. Shiki and Tamaki were buried in piles of documents, looking extremely focused. Seeing this, Makoto felt a twinge of guilt, knowing that this decision would add even more burden to their shoulders. However, when Makoto announced that he would be bringing Tomoe and Mio with him, the reaction was not what he had expected. Shiki responded very calmly, as if he had already predicted this outcome from the beginning. Instead of protesting, he immediately asked about Makoto's teaching schedule at the Rotsgard Academy. Makoto explained that his teaching schedule would continue as normal. With his teleportation ability, he could appear at any time without disrupting his other activities. Their main focus now was to strengthen Tsuge's resilience so that the city could stand on its own without relying too heavily on the Kuzunoha Company. Meanwhile, Tamaki fully accepted the responsibility of overseeing Asora. She even looked enthusiastic, as if this opportunity was a new and enjoyable challenge for her. With the full support of both of them, Makoto was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. The meeting then continued with Tomoe's report regarding the port city of Koran, one of the largest trading partners that maintained a close relationship with the Kuzunoha Company. From the outside, this cooperation looked like an ordinary business partnership, but Tomoe explained that there was something far stranger behind it. According to her, the attitude of Koran's residents was overly cooperative, to the point that it felt more like worship toward Kuzunoha. Tomoe then laid out the reason. Thanks to ship technology developed by the Eldwarves, combined with secret assistance from the Neptune race that lived beneath the sea, Koran's ships became the only vessels that could truly sail safely. While ships from other cities were repeatedly destroyed by sea monsters and merciless storms, attacks that were mostly carried out by Levi and Makoto's sea forces, who acted like guardian pirates, Koran's ships always returned with abundant catches of fish. Because of this overly perfect pattern, the people of Koran began to view the Kuzunoha company as a divine savior of the sea. They even welcomed Tomoe with excessive reverence whenever she visited, as if she were a queen from Tsuge. After hearing the full story for the first time, Tamaki immediately concluded that Koran was, in practical terms, already completely under Tsuge's control and could be considered a subordinate territory. Makoto listened to the report with mixed feelings. Of course, he was glad to hear that Koran's business was flourishing, but on the other hand, he felt uneasy imagining Levi having fun sinking any ship that was deemed a disturbance. However, since everyone involved, including Mio, who was always delighted by the deliveries of fresh seafood from Koran, agreed to maintain this good relationship, Makoto began to consider visiting Koran at least once. Tomoe also added that the people of Koran held great respect for representatives of both the Kuzunoha company and Rembrandt's company. Therefore, if Makoto were to visit, he would be welcomed like a noble. After that, Makoto shifted the discussion to another issue, namely crystal coral, a rare material that had been mentioned by a merchant from the Shira company. Tomoe explained that the people of Koran actually disliked the Shira company. This stemmed from a past incident in which the Shira company harvested crystal coral excessively, even crossing into a sacred area that was strictly protected by the residents of Koran. That greed earned them a terrible reputation and eventually led to them being forbidden from harvesting crystal coral ever again. Shiki responded to this story with an irritated tone. In his view, Shira's actions were truly foolish. They had already been granted permission to collect crystal coral, yet they still felt unsatisfied and forced their way into a forbidden zone. As a result, an opportunity that should have been profitable was lost forever. However, even though the Shira company had acted badly in the past, the people of Koran had now forgiven them because Shira participated in Tsuge's independence plan. Even so, Makoto remained cautious. He worried that if the Shira company repeated a similar mistake, the Kuzunoha company could be affected as well. For that reason, Makoto intended to monitor the situation more carefully. Nevertheless, their conclusion remained the same. There were no major problems in Koran at present, so Tomoe and Mio did not need to intervene directly. After the report regarding Koran was completed and everyone felt that the situation was relatively safe, Tomoe began to arrange the departure schedule to Lorel. Makoto approved the plan, but before leaving, he wanted to make sure that all reports from his subordinates were fully settled. Now it was Mio's turn to give her report. In addition to discussing the bento menu that had already been explained earlier, Mio mentioned that the condition of the city remained stable and that there were no significant threats. However, she brought up one small piece of information. Rinon's birthday, Toa's younger sister, would be coming up soon. The subordinates agreed to celebrate the birthday at Mio's restaurant as a form of appreciation for the good relationship they had maintained so far. After that, they also briefly discussed the relationship between the Kuzunoha company and the Adventurer Guild. In short, the relationship was in excellent condition. There were no conflicts, no friction, and cooperation had been smooth up to this point. Therefore, there was nothing to worry about in this area. Once Mio's report was finished, it was Shiki's turn to explain the situation in Rotsgard. Good news came one after another. The merchant guild led by Zara had become far more cooperative. There were no longer any parties willing to oppose the Kuzunoha company, and even the mysterious stigma that had once clung to Makoto was gradually disappearing since he began regularly attending guild meetings. On the other hand, the reconstruction of the city after the variant attacks was progressing extremely well. Areas that had previously been destroyed now looked even more lively than before. What was even more surprising was that the demi-humans who had once lived in the slums were not expelled. Instead, they were allowed to remain and had even begun to obtain work through the part-time employment system introduced by Makoto's company. This change created a level of social stability that had never existed under the previous leadership. Shiki also reported that representatives of the guild had requested Makoto's help in reconstructing several small cities around Hrothsgard. However, he suggested that they should not become too deeply involved in those projects. Their main focus should remain on the capital city of Hrothsgard, especially since it was still the largest center of education and trade on the continent. Finally, Shiki delivered a report regarding the academy. He explained that Makoto's students were waiting with great enthusiasm. There were around 30 people who had passed the selection to become his students, although Shiki felt that the number would decrease as time went on. He knew very well that Makoto's training standards were not something that anyone could handle easily. After all reports outside of Asora were considered complete, Makoto closed the meeting with one final question, this time directed at Tamaki. He wanted to know Tamaki's overall impression of Asora so far. Tamaki gave a small smile and said that Asora was a wonderful place, but she had several important points that she wanted to report to Makoto privately. Among those points, Tamaki explained the condition of the shrine she was overseeing. It turned out that most people came to the shrine not to worship, but to enjoy the beauty of the cherry blossoms blooming around it. The shrine had become more like a sightseeing spot than a place of worship, and Tamaki did not mind this at all. According to Tamaki, the people of Asora were not fundamentally a group that worshipped a goddess or any god. Even when they prayed, they did not pray to any divine entity. Instead, they prayed in Makoto's name. This statement immediately shocked Makoto, while Tomoe, Mio, and Shiki looked pleased to hear this development. Makoto himself did not understand why people were praying in his name. At that point, Tamaki explained very casually that Makoto had come to be regarded as a god by the people of Asora. From her perspective, it had been a very long time since there was a leader who was worshipped to such an extent. And interestingly, Makoto had never claimed himself to be a god, yet the people continued to revere him anyway. For Makoto, this was not a trivial matter. He asked Tamaki to explain to the residents that they should pray to a god, not to him. The discussion then continued regarding the internal conditions of Asora. Tamaki mentioned that Sari and Emma were working extremely well. The level of public dissatisfaction was very low, which meant that Asora's current administration was in a very stable state and was trusted by its people. However, there was one issue related to development. There were still many wild animals entering the city's boundaries, ranging from wolves and bears to rock birds. Tamaki suggested an extreme solution: to eliminate those animals immediately, or to control all of them in order to prevent territorial conflicts when Asora's population grew even larger. She even mentioned genocide as a simple and clear option. Makoto immediately rejected that horrifying idea. He chose a peaceful approach instead, establishing territorial rules for wild animals without any bloodshed. Tamaki accepted the decision, viewing it as a form of training to make Makoto more decisive in expressing his will. In short, after a long discussion, everyone concluded that there were no major problems in Asora, Tsuge, or Hrothsgard. Makoto began to feel as though fate itself was truly pushing him to go to Lorel. If there had been issues before, he might have postponed the journey. However, since everything was running stably, he proceeded to arrange the departure schedule. Before actually leaving, Makoto decided to head to the academy first in order to check on the condition of his students. So, that is the recap of Part 22 of TSUKIMICHI Moonlit Fantasy.